well. What else do you see happening here that are red flags or markers of the destruction of a democracy?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the media. It's not just the media; it's the kind of media. So, from a good example is Russia. If you let your media centralize into just a few outlets, and if you let local news die, then it becomes much harder for democracy to thrive, because democracy depends on people being able to inform themselves about the home truths, about the things that matter in their lives. We in the U.S. have let local news die in the last 10 or 15 years, and it's largely been replaced by Facebook and very centralized forms of basically psychological manipulation. And we see in around the world, in the Near East, in Asia, and also in the United States, how Facebook tends to make things worse, including on January 6th. So one long-term thing we need to be doing is thinking about resuscitating investigative journalism.
Because when you start hearing people's stories, you always find a thread of your own story in somebody else. And the minute that recognition happens, that becomes the basis for a community.
But it does seem like something has changed so that it's become so extreme that we're not even allowing ourselves to get into a position where we can see that commonality. I've heard in the past you talk about when you were starting out in politics, you would go down to Southern Illinois to very conservative districts.
Yeah, they give me a hearing.
Right.
Yeah. No, and I think that's changed. Part of it is the nationalization of media, the nationalization of politics. The fact is that you used to have a bunch of local newspapers, local TV stations. People weren't having these highly ideological debates, but they were kind of more focused on what's happening day to day.
The same as of local media interviews. Local media is still one of the most trusted sources of information. There's also, and it's so funny because I remember when we did some of this, it was so controversial, like we weren't, back in the Obama days where we were just like not respecting the sanctity of the presidency, where doing something like a podcast or Pod Save America, right? Or doing engagements with digital figures was something so outlandish and kind of out of the ordinary.
Right.
But also, let's be real, more people listening, more people viewing, more people consuming that information about what's actually happening in their lives than is necessarily in every cable chyron every day.
There's a certain element of community cohesion which comes from the local newspaper. It reminds us all about shared experiences. You know who died, you know who graduated from high school, you know whose kid had a great game. Those are all important elements about holding people together.
You're describing the soul of a community.
Sure.